God's will is.
Desmond Ford's teachings were tested against the scripture, and the Glacia View group testing them against the scriptures did not see light in his view. It is out of that context, not against Ellen White. Friday morning, the consensus statement that we developed was brought to the floor. It was read, it was discussed, and it was voted. If not unanimously, very close. And very interestingly, Desmond Ford said, I can agree with everything in this statement. Here's where things went off the rails, I believe. So we're getting just an hour or two, and the conference is going to end, and I'm feeling incredible relief. Because it's been a week of high tension, high drama. And then suddenly another statement appears. I had no knowledge of it beforehand. It was a statement that had been prepared by a committee of 6 the day or the night before. And it had 10 points where Des Ford, his ideas disagreed with church teaching. And it was never discussed, it was never voted, it was simply read and taken away.
A place for conversations, SDAQ&A. You're safe to speak your truth, common ground, shared beliefs with lots of room for disagreement. Tell us all what you believe and let us see if we can challenge you. It's from all paths coming here to share their stories. Some have left this global church, some remain and defend her. Where are you on the path? Does Ellen still appeal to you? SDAQ&A, you are welcome here. 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 Oh, SDAQ&A, you are welcome here. SDAQ&A, you love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, and all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, will never be the same ever again.
God's will is simple. The most wretched man in hell will not be Adolf Hitler. The most wretched man in hell, or woman, will not be one like Joe Stalin or some of these more modern devils. The most wretched person in hell will be a former Seventh-day Adventist.
Hello, and welcome to another SDAQ&A. I am your host, Peter Dixon, for this evening, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you may be, whatever time zone you're in, welcome. And today we go back in time. So if you are listening to season 2 on the podcast, this is the voice from the future, 2026. We had an incredible journey 6 years ago and released 86 conversations dedicated to understanding Glacia View, Des Ford, what went down in 1980, how the church split without even realizing it. And it was an incredible series that I am now uploading one at a time to YouTube and other live platforms. We're going live today to, I think, 7 different platforms: Twitch, X, 2 or 3 Facebook pages, 2 or 3 YouTube channels. And we're just having a wonderful time sharing a look at Adventism, revealing it one conversation at a time, warts and all. So yeah, welcome everybody today. And you can see just below here, if you'd like to support what I'm doing, just send us a few dollars to paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music. Thought I'd give you a few moments there to go and make a little donation. Do you know, a lot of people say to me, are you still banging on about Des Ford? Well, let me tell you, because we banged on about Des Ford, we revealed a very interesting truth, revealing a lie at the center of Glacia View. Des Ford and others had been hoping for an open, honest discussion about Ellen White and her support of Miller's dates leading to 1844, October 22, when they expected the Lord to return. And of course, we're still here. He didn't return. And so a lot of people went back into their own denominations or left entirely. William Miller gave up the notion of seeking a date to let everybody know when the Lord would return. But a small band of interesting people got together and suggested that William Miller's dates were correct, but that a different event had occurred in heaven that night. And Des Ford and a bunch of other scholars and academics and people who have brain cells decided to question those dates, to question the notion of the investigative judgment as being biblical. They suggested that maybe it wasn't. Well, as you can imagine, the Adventist Church, you know, the only unique doctrine they had or have is this sanctuary doctrine. You cannot mess with that, because if you mess with that, you diminish the authority of Ellen G. White, the spirit of prophecy, representative in the remnant church. You just can't do it. You can't mess with her authority. And so all those who questioned were pretty much given a chance to have one last hurrah. Des Ford, the scapegoat, was asked to come to a place called Glacia View to share his studies, and he presented a famous manuscript, which is just behind me there, actually, the original, one of the originals, and it was in 3 parts, nearly 1,000 pages long, where he outlined his beliefs. Now, this is the lie I speak of. At the center of Glacia View, a consensus document was written up by Bill Johnson, and it was voted on, I think, on the Friday morning, the last day of this gathering, where over 120 plus people gathered, ministers, academics, administrators, scholars, theologians, and they were supposedly gathering together to discuss these ideas that Des had presented. So anyway, they came up with this consensus document that was voted on the Friday morning, and the majority said, yeah, we could go along with this, blending Des's ideas and thoughts into the Adventist mix. And even Des said, yeah, I could go along with that. I could do that. However, soon after, later that day, Des and Gillian and a handful of others were wheeled into a back room, and a 10-point statement of some of Des's ideas that were, well and truly outside of the Adventists' ability to cope with these thoughts, was wheeled out, and not in that moment, but soon after, Des was defrocked. Here's the lie. I've been building up to this, and I'm going to play it for you in a second. And then we're going to get on to today's program, which is episode 37 with Dr. Eliezer Gonzalez. At the time of the interview, he was director of Good News Unlimited, and it's a wonderful interview and a replay. But anyway, at the just after Glacia View, a lie was spread that the majority at Glacia View did not come to a consensus, did not agree with Des. Now, this afternoon meeting, the 10-point statement that was brought out was not voted on, was not presented to the entire group. It was a kangaroo court operation. So the interesting thing is the person that helped perpetuate that lie was Dr. Bill Johnson. And in his retirement on my show, he revealed that, in fact, there was consensus. The majority did agree. So let's watch those 2 moments. The moment in 1984 where Dr. Bill Johnson perpetuates the lie told about Glacia View, and then he shares what really happened. And then there's a brief moment where he talks a little bit about the 10-point statement as well, and articulates it way better than me. And so those who say to me, are you still banging on about Des Ford? Well, guess what? The church is still presenting that lie. Now, look, I agree. The teachings of Des Ford, minimizing the authority of Ellen White, it's never going to rub well with Adventist leaders and tradads, traditional Adventists. But the progressives continue thinking that somehow it can. They'd like to see themselves as Reformationist Adventists, Reformation Adventists. But sadly, Des Ford, who in many ways was the Luther of the Adventist Church and pinned his, statements to the wall of the Adventist Church, the door of the Adventist Church, and whereas Luther gained traction, a foothold and influence, Des Ford has continued to influence, but well and truly was not able to reform the Adventist Church in the way it probably needed to be reformed. So here's that incredible moment, 1984, where Bill Johnson says the majority didn't agree, and then watch the flip when he'd retired and there was no way he could lose his job. He said the opposite, and he revealed what the lie was.
Desmond Ford's teachings were tested against the scripture, and the Glacia View group testing them against the scriptures did not see light in his view. It is out of that context, not against Ellen White.
Friday morning, the consensus statement that we developed was brought to the floor. It was read, it was discussed, and it was voted. If not unanimously, very close. And very interestingly, Desmond Ford said, I can agree with everything in this statement.
Isn't that interesting? So to those who say we bang on too much, if we hadn't have banged on about it, if I had not had the opportunity to interview Bill Johnson in his retired years, that lie would not have been corrected. So I'm glad we banged on about it. And here he talks a little bit about the 10-point statement that was wheeled out, not voted on, to eventually defrock Des Ford.
Here's where things went off the rails, I believe. So we're getting just an hour or two and the conference is going to end, and I'm feeling incredible relief. Because it's been a week of high tension, high drama. And then suddenly another statement appears. I had no knowledge of it beforehand. It was a statement that had been prepared by a committee of 6 the day or the night before. And it had 10 points where Des Ford, his ideas disagreed with church teaching. And it was never discussed, it was never voted, it was simply read and taken away.
The profundity of that interview should never be hidden. And the church continues, the Adventist church continues to try and hide the reality there. Now, I agree with the church. Des Ford was the oil and the traditional views, and having Ellen White as the authority is the water, and oil and water don't mix. But at least be honest about it, And I just wish that the good people of the progressive movement, the Reformation Adventists, had kind of dug their heels in a bit more and really gotten behind Des and really defined their movement, whereas now they wander around with great weakness, bleating like sheep about what could have been, never feeling any desire to reveal any kind of accountability for the lack that they and I did. I was a progressive as well. I was a Reformation Adventist. So it's interesting that we now talk with Dr. Eliezer Gonzalez. At the time of this interview, he was CEO of Good News Unlimited, which was an incredible organization and still is to this day, still going. 46 years later, post Glacier View, Good News Unlimited is still going and doing an incredible work. Go and check out their website. I think it's gnu.org. Just type in Good News Unlimited, Des Ford, and it'll pop up. And go and check out their website. I'll try and bring a link to it later as well. So sit back and relax, and I'll just give you a moment there to just go over to paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music and just, throw a coin or two into my offering basket there. Oh, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. And once again, welcome everybody watching. Please sit back and relax and enjoy this very interesting conversation with Dr. Eliezer Gonzalez. Welcome everyone to another SDA Q&A. I'm Peter Dixon. We're going live to our Facebook group. We love people to come and look us up there and join us there, because you can interact, and also here on the podcast for those that are just listening to the audio post in the podcast. And my very special guest today is Dr. Eliezer Gonzalez. Have I pronounced that close to correct, Ellie?
Very correct in English.
Okay. Give me the proper pronunciation.
Eliezer Gonzalez.
Wow. Isn't it interesting? My wife's Irish.
Yeah.
And there's certain letters that when she speaks Irish language, that I just cannot get my mouth around, and then she just says them so easily.
You know, Spanish is the language of heaven.
The language of heaven.
That's why you need the glorified body and tongue to speak it. Some of us get a head. Yeah.
Well, you've got a head start on the rest of us then. And you mentioned off air that I can call you Ellie, if that's all right.
Sure.
That makes it nice and easy.
You do know what Eli means in Hebrew?
Tell me.
My God.
So that explains that movie, which is called The Book of Eli, or The Book of Eli. Have you seen that movie? What's his name again? The guy, I keep forgetting his name, the actor. And at the end of it, he is... What does Eli mean again?
My God.
My God. And he has memorized the whole of the Bible.
Yeah.
And so he is Eli. And I think it's an apocalyptic world where he's traveling from one part of the other to transcribe the Bible into written form, because the world's books have been destroyed.
I don't have tickets on myself. That's just what my mother used to call me. So
yeah, well,
don't worry about it.
I like it. I think Peter just means rock. Is that the opposite of God?
No, God is called the rock often in the Bible. So.
Oh, there we go. Good team us then. Well, look, I'm going to dig into some questions. I don't often, as people know, I meander a bit and have more of a conversation, but I want to kind of stick to some questions here for you. And there are viewers that will be cheering. 10% of the viewers do enjoy when I stick to questions and stay focused. And so I'm going to try and do that today, but we've already gotten off track quite a bit. So we might as well.
That's fine.
But it's a fun conversation, and we just want to welcome everyone that has joined us today. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know you better. We met, you reminded me, because I was thinking, where did I meet this guy? And it was at the Now meeting, I think it might be 6 years ago now, where something like that, where I invited Dr. Des Ford to speak for us down in this area. And he'd spoken many times over the years in Kurrambong, around the area. And it was a wonderful day, wasn't it? He took the service for us in the morning to over 350 people crammed into the venue there, and the afternoon for the Q&A, which was the actual first ever SDA Q&A meeting. and again 330 people in the afternoon. And I remember thinking, wow, here's this guy. How old was he then? 86 maybe? I don't know, 80, early 80s, and
80s.
So vibrant and pulling a crowd, creating passion, divergent views, interesting questions. And
It was the last time, Peter, that he spoke publicly. After that, as far as I know, and I should know, unless I'm forgetting something, he only ever spoke to small, GNU groups, if you like.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now that's interesting, because I drove up not too long, and Jill will be able to share with this, to where they lived, and did my first 3 podcasts, the interview with him. And I've got an idea that may have been his last interview as well.
Yeah. Des made a real effort to get down there to Morisset, to that meeting that you organised, a real effort, because he wasn't travelling anymore by then.
And that the profundity of that didn't escape me at the time. I remember thinking, this is a very special event, and I think a lot of people that came along realised that it might be one of the last times they saw him as well. I went and had a look the other day, and I might put a link in this interview. I went and just had a look at the afternoon program, and even though we had some sound problems, there's over 8,500 views of that program. So it's good to kind of have these conversations, and I think keep a lot of the positive things that he brought to the planet, alive and up with social media. We can keep it up kind of in front of everybody as well if they choose to come and listen. Hey, before I dig in and ask a little bit about your experience growing up as an Adventist, tell us just what you are doing at the moment with relation to Good News Unlimited.
Yes, well, I head up Good News Unlimited, which is, of course, the ministry that Des founded, originally in the USA, after Glacia View. And so it's quite funny, in my contract, I'm the senior pastor, because there were other pastors before, and Des being one of them. I was a senior pastor, and quite hilariously and inappropriately, you'd think Des, being retired, was my junior pastor. It's just quite stupid, really.
That can be your claim to fame, is Des was your junior pastor.
Yeah, don't tell anyone, because I'd get in trouble with anyone who loves Des. But I've always had a chuckle at that. It's not how it was, of course. But I'm officially the senior pastor and managing director of GNU. I had a meeting with a president here of one of the conferences some years ago, and he sat back behind his desk, and he had a chuckle, and a gleam was in his eye, and he said, "You, a pastor? You, a pastor?" I said, "That's what my contract says." I said, and last year GNU brought approximately 10,000 people to Christ, thousands of baptisms. So, I don't know, I guess I'm a pastor.
It sounds like a pastor to me. Was he kind of tried it as a put down, or was he genuinely thinking, how could you be a pastor and run GNU, as if pastors shouldn't be involved with it?
With administrators, it's always a bit of both, maybe. He's a friendly guy. Yeah.
And where is the headquarters?
Well, I'm doing this from the global epicenter of Good News Unlimited, which is actually in my living room in Good News on the Gold Coast. We have an office in Penrith in Sydney.
Right.
But it's an outsourced office. In other words, we pay them by the month to handle all of our admin and manage stuff for us. And we find that that's just a much more cost-effective way to run things, rather than, wasting people's gospel money on big overheads.
Yeah. And I know we'll come to this a little deeper later, and I'm a bit off track already, but I think there was a time maybe when Jill and Des thought, let's turn this into more of a religious kind of organisation. Was there ever a time where that was considered?
Do you mean a church?
Yes, because you are a religious organisation.
Yeah. Well, we are the church. I know that, you know that, we all know that. The church is never an organisation, it's the body of Christ, wherever it is, and however it meets, even if by Zoom.
True. The SDAQ&A has become church as well for a lot of people.
So, we are church. But the history of Good News Unlimited is that after Glacia View, there were calls and big calls on Des. This is as far as I know. I wasn't there. I'm actually interesting. I'm a generation that comes behind. Many calls on Des to break away and form a church. And there were many calls on Des in subsequent years when it was obvious that, a rapprochement, coming together wasn't going to be possible between Good News and the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So there was always much pressure to form a church. Back after Glacia View, Good News Unlimited had a database of over 200,000 people.
Whoa! What year was that?
Well, that would have been soon after.
Oh, sorry, you said soon after Glacia View. Yeah.
So I'm not sure what year, 1982, 1985, 86, around then.
Wow.
And so Des could have very easily, he had the funds, he had the expertise within, the broader body of
people he could have called on.
Church. Yeah. But that's not something that Des ever wanted to do. And since I've joined Good News Unlimited, people have continually asked me to do that, particularly in our work in developing nations, where if you're a church, you have more credibility. But I've always resisted that because every single denomination in Christendom was formed because some person, usually a man, almost always a man, decided there was something wrong with the church that he did go to, and that if he formed another church, it'd be more perfect. And look where we've ended up, billions of them. So if I decided to form a new denomination, I can, I don't know the future, I'm not a prophet, but I can guarantee you this, it'll be just as wrong as the last one.
Have you encountered the same sort of difficulties, though, in having a religious organisation? Have you been able to sidestep any of the politics and admin issues that you would have had if you were a church anyway?
Yes, we have, because, and this is due to some decisions that the board of Good News Unlimited had to make pretty soon after I joined, and that Good News Unlimited had made before, really. After I joined, it was kind of, we stepped up, up in our evolution, if you like, because it was evident that Des wasn't going to be around for decades more. And so how we've avoided those pressures is by, first of all, very deliberately not having any sort of creed or statement of faith. And very deliberately, so you see, okay, when I joined Good News Unlimited, we faced some certain challenges, very definite challenges. One is, I told you that Good News Unlimited in the early 80s had a database of 200,000 people, right? When I joined Good News Unlimited, we had a database of 2,000. Why? Because unfortunately, people pass away. That's why. And the reality is, as much as we would like it to be otherwise, there is no real, genuine, sustained interest in the issues of Glacia View in the Seventh-day Adventist Church anymore, because the administrators of the church have killed interest in righteousness by faith, the gospel, as we would understand it. And they've done that deliberately because, anyway, so there's no interest.
That's true. And go on, tell us your thoughts on that.
There was no future for Good News Unlimited as a ministry by by seeing at least as part of our ministry being to try to reach Adventists with the gospel. And what Jesus said, there comes a time when you've got to shake the dust off your sandals.
Yeah.
And our purpose always was to keep Des's legacy alive. And as much as he made an enormous contribution to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and he will continue to do so, he has transformed the Seventh-day Adventist Church forever. However, to keep Des's ministry alive, we needed to start finding financial supporters and donors from outside of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Because all the others, unfortunately, were going into nursing homes or passing away. Yeah. Losing income, and unfortunately, you need money to keep going. And so we had to fall back on Des's DNA. And I did discuss this with Des, and we did it with his full blessing. And Des's DNA is that he started off as an evangelist. He always was an evangelist, and it was always about the gospel. So we see our mission as reaching the unreached with the gospel. Now that could be a Seventh-day Adventist who's only ever heard legalism sitting in the pew. It could be an ex-whatever from whatever denomination. But it could also be anyone in any other country on earth, who has no Christian connection and background. And so that's what we do. And so we've actually severed our ties completely with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The reality is that previously we spent the bulk of our finances sending magazines and DVDs of Des to Seventh-day Adventists. Yeah. Which was fine. But that wasn't going to be able to continue or sustain us for a number of reasons. So by severing our ties with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, not having any specific in-reach into the Seventh-day Adventist Church, although that hasn't pleased everyone, we've been able to not incur criticism from the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and not have any issues with any other sort of denomination either. We represent the gospel, the essence of the gospel, and all those Christians of whatever flavour or persuasion who are happy to stand on that platform, we can work with and we can stand with them. But at the end of the day, our hermeneutic in many ways is still very Seventh-day Adventist, because Seventh-day Adventism at its best has a beautiful representation, a way of representing the gospel, and a deep understanding of the gospel at its best.
Yeah. And I've said this for in quite a few interviews, when I spoke to Kenneth Samples, protege, mentor of Walter Martin, he said that when he read that book, the 991 page, manuscript, that he had never more fully appreciated and seen the gospel shine. And
and lots of people, what a lot of people don't understand, Peter, is that it was always about the gospel.
Yeah. The assurance of the gospel, the good news.
Des's opponents, you get it, but Des's opponents say, it was because Des disagreed with Ellen White. Yeah. Because Des disagreed with on who the little horn in Daniel 8. It's because Des didn't agree with our prophetic understanding. Des didn't agree with the sanctuary.
Yeah.
Nonsense. Yeah. Absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
Des stood up at Glacia View to defend the gospel and to say, we need to relook at anything in our understanding as a denomination that removes the gospel from the heart of who we are as a people.
Yeah.
And by the way, Des said, and this is the Glacia View manuscript, there's been plenty of other people before who have stood up and said the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that doesn't take anything away from Des, and it doesn't take anything away from them. No. It's just a light that gets shone sometimes, and certain conduits are better at explaining it to people.
Well, I see Des as someone in a long line of I say messengers in an Adventist context, that's got specific connotations. I don't mean in that way. In a long line of people or messengers, I'm using my own context, not in an Adventist context, that God has sent to the Seventh-day Adventist Church to draw it back to the gospel.
Yeah,
You can go way back.
Yeah. When I was talking to Dr. John Pauline the other day, or Pauline, I probably not very cleverly, but used the example of music, and when I'm passionate about the pentatonic scale, and again in this case not pentatonic in anything to do with paganism, pentatonic as in the 5 notes of the scale that can be superimposed on any key, and when you love that you get passionate about it. And then I started learning about the modes and the 7 modes, and I got very passionate about that. But what I realized is that I've only really stumbled across in my whole life maybe 5 people that have been able to really explain it to me. And then when I've had students of my own, I've really only had a couple of hundred students, maybe only 5 people that really grasped it as well. So, yeah, I think every now and again someone like Des comes along, they see the complexity, the theory, they have a passion for it, but they just have a way of teaching, of passing that message on. They're not even a messenger, they're just grabbing the message, passing it on. No one owns the 7 modes, but some people can pass it on better and more with more kind of an inspiring way, a clearer way. And I think that's what Des did.
Sure.
Do you think, so let's just imagine again, and I see the reasons why you didn't turn it into a religion, but just just for a moment, vision cast with me. Let's imagine that in 81, 82 it was turned into a religion. What do you think it would look like now if Good News Unlimited had become a religion? Because there'd be some good about it, wouldn't there?
No, it'd be dead. It'd be gone.
Really?
I reckon, yeah.
Why do you think?
Because by religion you're implying organisation, and with organisation comes power and politicking, and I mean there are small. I'm aware that there have been small churches that have been started off like, independent churches by people associated with Good News Unlimited over the years, and they've tended to be eventually be swallowed up by other denominations themselves. I don't. That's a hard question for me. I see very little virtue in much of organised religion as it exists today. That doesn't mean I'm non-denominational in that sense. I don't believe that all denominations are bad. Each has its good emphasis. But unless you're a Christian first, and your love of Christ compels you to serve within Christian community, you've got it back in front.
Yeah. I agree with you, by the way.
And that means, as I say sometimes shockingly, and I'm still a Seventh-day Adventist, and still a Sabbath keeper, but that means that if in your study of the Word, or the Holy Spirit tells you that you've been wrong about the Sabbath, well, you've got to be prepared to listen. You're a Christian first. You're a Christ follower, and you must be prepared to bend to whatever revelation Christ gives you through the Word, supported by the work of the Holy Spirit in your life.
How do you essentially you're a resource for people? They can be from a Baptist church or an Anglican church or an Adventist church. You're a little bit of a beacon where people can stay in their religion if they wanted, their denomination, their movement, their modality, whatever, and they can get some insights and resources and material to enhance their understanding of the gospel. Would you say that's kind of what you guys are doing?
I think we've got 3 audiences. The main one is in parts of the world where Christianity isn't the majority religion, or even in Africa where it seems it is, but African Christianity is a strange mix of the worst excesses of North American prosperity gospel and televangelists and the traditional animistic religions, with a thin layer of Christian words covering everything.
Yeah.
India, Muslims, Hindus. And so we actually very specifically target non-Christian parts of the world. We're a fully digital ministry now, and so we reach over 220 countries, approximately 1 million people every month with the gospel. So the first segment of our audience that we reach are, let's say, non-Christians. The second segment are people who are already Christians, but don't know the gospel or don't have assurance or need to be, grounded in the key, in a Christ-centered way of understanding Christianity.
Seeking some sort of inspiration.
Yeah. And so everything we do is, we try to reflect Des's approach. It's very encouraging, very focused on the word, and very positive and uplifting. And the third group audience that we have is the audience that we've always had, which are, that generation that went through or experienced Glacia View with Des and, some of the folks you've been interviewing. And they're people who have always loved Des and his ministry, and who continue to appreciate what Good News Unlimited does. And the amazing thing is that with the enormous transformation in Good News Unlimited, since I joined, we had to change in order to survive and keep Des's legacy going. We brought along almost every single one of GNU supporters. There were a few who weren't happy because, now things were a little bit simpler in the way we messaged, not so theological, but still very deeply theological in its origins. And of course, it was a mixture of content, of Des and myself, because we needed new content as well. But we brought across almost everyone, and we still minister to them. And I'm often in touch with godly gentlemen who used to be pastors and who left the ministry after Glacia View. And so I tried to minister as best as I can to them and engage in their ideas and their dialogue as they continue to study, Daniel 8 and all the themes that Des raised.
And in some ways, are you avoiding turning Des into a bit of a guru, sort of cult-like figure himself? Because you're wanting to keep his legacy alive, but you don't want people to go, oh, good, we're going to kind of worship this guy and ironically turn him into an idol.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's a good point. And I always tell people I'm no Des, because the expectation was that, whoever took GNU over had better be, a real gun, a real guru. I'm no Des, neither in my knowledge or theological understanding, nor in my eloquence, or, in none of those. There'll only ever be one Des. But God, I think, picks people and gives them a calling for a season.
Yeah,
he needs different people for different phases.
Yeah,
but you're quite true that there are people, and I'll never have the connection with that generation that went through Glacia View. I was at school at the time.
Do you mind me asking how old you are? Just for reference to that time period.
I'm 53.
Right.
So Glacia View, I was in year 10.
Yeah.
Right. At high school. So I'll never have the connection with those people that went through that experience in the Adventist church.
No.
And they have a special connection with Des that I'll never have. But generations, one generation goes and another generation has to pick up the baton.
Yeah.
And you're a different kind of runner. That's all it is.
Yeah. And I think it's great what you're doing. And I can see the difficulties you could face as well, balancing the different things.
Very hard.
What kind of role did Des and Jill play were they involved with administrators, or did they pass this on to other people to administer and look after and run?
I can't really say about early on in the history of GNU. I mean, I think Des always had a more a more role in his role seemed to me to have been always more about presenting and writing, and other people had more the administration skills. Since I joined Good News Unlimited, I kept Des and Jill as well briefed as I could about the goings on in GNU, but Des was by then very definitely looking to not be involved in the running of GNU and not be making decisions, but he was always interested and concerned. The main role that Des had in GNU was, through me. Since I joined GNU, I would visit Des every few weeks, and I've been visiting Jill too. I owe her a visit. I'm going to get in touch, Jill.
She's watching.
Yes, and we'd sit together, and I'd have a chat with Des and Jill and give them an update about GNU, and then Des and I would go for a walk on the seashore.
The classic walk.
Yeah, and the walks over the years got shorter and shorter, but still, I'm still struggling with some theological issues, right? Because I used to be the arch conservative, the arch legalist. I was Des' enemy.
Really?
In my life, yes.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So,
why?
And Des just gently led me and answered my questions, and we speculated on biblical topics, and he gave me his wisdom, and it was, I was never able to sit in the the life and teachings of Jesus, of Christ class at Avondale College. I never did an undergraduate degree at Avondale College either, so I was never able to be taught by Des. But I think I had a privilege in his last few years that very few people got to have.
Yeah. I had someone very close to Des a few interviews ago, not in an interview, but via a private message, ask me why I've kind of been doing the Glacia View series with such sort of intensity in a manner that in many ways I'm uplifting Des, and when some people have a go at him, I'll defend him. Even though I've left the church myself, people have said why, and particularly my wife actually, why are you doing this? I'm kind of anyone that's being suppressed. I feel like I want to, even when I was in grade 2, if there was another person in my class that seemed to be being bullied, I found myself defending the person who was being oppressed.
So a voice of justice.
A lot of my passion is not really defending what someone is saying, but their right to say it, or their right to live in a place where they're not being bullied. And I then said to them, in fact, there's lots of what Des taught that I actually don't even believe. And they said, well, how can you even begin to support and stand up for him? Apart from the reason I just said, I said, because what Des kind of taught me was to think for yourself and become your own person and dig deep and find out what things mean for you by your own research.
Well, I've just said, Peter, that I'm still struggling with issues, Yeah. I mean, and some people might be shocked and horrified to know that I've never agreed with Des in a way. It's more complicated than we can go into now, with having Antiochus Epiphanes as the key and main and central, interpretation of the little horn in Daniel chapter 8. And boy, did Des and I have chats about that. Yeah. And I remember once we were talking about that as we were walking along, and he slapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Ellie, one day you're going to agree with me." And I said, "Why? How do you know?" And he said, "Because, Ellie, you're an honest man and you're an intelligent man." So and even when I joined Good News Unlimited, And that's an interesting story in itself. But my job interview went like this. I went to hear Des speak at Milton in Brisbane, and it's the first time I've ever heard him speak, by the way. You know, how about that for someone who's about to head up Good News Unlimited? And but you don't know the backstory. I should tell you the backstory. Des and Elaine had gone up to Darwin on a prayer retreat to ask God to send them someone to take over Good News Unlimited because the time had come. And they were praying earnestly. And unbeknownst to them, a godly pastor who knew me from some master's work I'd done at Avondale College, that being Graham Bradford.
Oh, yeah.
He gave me a call because he'd been speaking with Des or Elaine, and they'd shared their concerns with him. And he wasn't meant to actually ring anyone or ring me, but he rang me while Des and Elaine were in this prayer retreat saying, you know, would you be interested in, you know, an opportunity, but if you took it, you'll probably never have a role with the Seventh-day Adventist Church again. And at that stage, all I wanted was to be a pastor in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And so while Des and Elaine were praying, their prayers were being answered. So anyway, I rock up. That's how it started. I rock, more story behind that, but I rock up and hear Des preach. And then, you know, Des wasn't one for socialising after meetings. He says, Ellie, let's go for a walk. So we went for a walk, and this was my job interview. Walking along, he says, well, at that stage he probably called me Eliezer. He said, Eliezer, what do you believe about 1844? And I said, well, this man is being pretty direct, isn't he? And I said, well, I think something happened, but I don't know what. And he said, what do you believe about Ellen White? And I said, well, I think she had the prophetic gift, but I have some questions. We walked on a little bit longer, and then he said, you'll do. So I tell you that.
Exact words?
Exact words.
You'll
so
do.
I tell you that, Peter, so you can see why we're not a church, right?
Yeah.
There's no creed.
Yeah.
Right? He could see God's leading. He had prayed about it, and somehow the Holy Spirit was speaking to him. And I could see God's leading as well, even though joining GNU was the last thing in the world I wanted to do or could ever have envisaged that I would do, because anyone associated with GNU would burn in hell, though only temporarily, of course, as far as I had believed before.
Yeah.
But that's how God works. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I love the idea that people can gather around and have different beliefs. I think Jill actually wrote something that just caught my eye. Oh, yeah. She was saying that it's actually just, I can't quite see it, but she was saying what you were talking about. It's just gone to the next paragraph and the screen's chopped the first part. What were you saying you disagreed with Des on?
Antiochus Epiphanes being the little horn.
Right, so that's the part in the top of the message, and under that it says was the prototype rather than the main dish.
Yes, that's right. That's right, and I agree with that. And Jill and I are having ongoing discussions exploring this together too.
Yeah, and that can be fun and a side thing. And the main dish is the assurance of salvation, the good news, as taught by Jesus' teachings.
Yeah, that's right. And Des and I always, some of your listeners might be shocked or not to know that I disagree with Des about, his later views on the age of the earth and, creation. And I still would say I tended towards a literal 6-day creation, but I'd say I'm not too sure. And I'd also say it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
There was a time when I was sure of everything, right? When I knew I was the Bible answer man. Trust me, you asked me a question, I had the definitive answer. Now, I'm more sure than I ever have been of what's really important. And a lot of the other stuff I'll leave for others who others to debate and work out. Yeah.
So have you worked out what did happen in 1844, October 22?
Yeah, well, I've sort of transitioned on that. I used to think that what happened is that the books of heaven were opened, where the list of all our sins are kept, and also Christ's blood contaminated by our sins, all kept up there in the heavenly sanctuary, and then and they were all provisionally forgiven sins, and then when and there was a big judgment that started on October 22, 1844, and then God determined whether the people who had repented actually deserved salvation or not, based on how well their performance had gone after they had been provisionally forgiven. And if their performance hadn't gone up, wasn't up to scratch, all their sins were rolled back upon their heads, which is, of course, the traditional Seventh-day Adventist teaching of the investigative judgment, as much as some may wish to deny it these days. Just go back to the books, Ellen White, Uriah Smith, etc. It's all there. You can't deny it. Then, of course, in the early 80s, when the church reacted against reacted to the issues that Des raised at Glacia View, I fully embraced, because I had to keep on the 1844 bandwagon, I fully embraced the view that no, it was a judgment of God and his righteousness and his righteous acts reflected in the lives of the saints. So we weren't being judged, it was God that was being judged. Right?
Wasn't he being judged at the cross? Well,
yes, that's the answer, I guess, but I'm telling you what I believed.
Right.
But now I believe that nothing happened in 1844, the 22nd of October.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt then. You're on a nice flow and I stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's a wonderful conclusion.
You see, I mean, if something happened on October 22, 1844, then nothing happened at Calvary.
Yeah, that's right. What's the
And
point?
I'm staking my salvation that something did happen at Calvary.
And what, when I asked this of Dr. John Pauline yesterday, he said, well, maybe as a metaphor, God was vindicated at the cross, but at the cross, God was the one being vindicated, and in 1844 it was now for humans to be vindicated.
Let me tell you something, Peter.
I didn't agree with that. But,
let me tell you something. For a few years, I was in that circle of Seventh-day Adventist theologians and publishing widely and attending all the Adventist theological meetings and SBL meetings and whatnot.
Yeah.
My published works are still there, in very conservative Seventh-day Adventist journals.
Wow.
They can't be removed. And so I know how this works. I was told, tell the people one thing and then have the scholarly debates behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I hardly know of any Seventh-day Adventist theologian that believes that anything at all happened in 1844.
Yeah.
Right?
But they like to couch it in...
But I can tell you the truth because I'm not salaried within the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about theologians, not administrators.
Yeah.
I know because they communicate with me.
Yeah.
And they, they came out of the woodwork and secretly visited Des continually, until in his late, all his life really, and communicated with him. I was once, where was it? San Francisco, New Orleans. I don't remember, at a meeting of the Adventist Theological Society. Good people, dedicated to the pursuit of truth, but hindered by the denominational, barbed wire fences. And the theme of the conference was the relationship between the Bible and culture. That's a good theme, isn't it? Don't you think, Peter?
Yeah, very
I think
good.
there'd be a whole lot of interesting issues there. The Bible and homosexuality, the Bible and the politics, the environment. I don't know. Anyway, culture, right? How we read the Bible through the lens of all that sort of stuff.
Culture and context.
I sat there the whole morning, And all the presentations were about how the Sabbath was valid for today, about prophetic interpretation, but mainly about how the Sabbath was valid for today, and so on. And I was standing in the queue to have lunch because it was held in a nice hotel. The Yanks know how to do these things. I was staying in the queue, and I was chatting in the queue with a friend of mine who was high up in the general conference and a theologian. And I said, I've got a question. Why is it that nobody deals with the topic of the conference, the Bible and culture? Why is everyone, they seem to be avoiding the issue? It's a really valid thing. You'd think there'd be really good discussion. And he leaned in and he said, Eliezer, we're all paid by the church.
Yeah, wow.
Right? So this is how it works.
Well, I remember when I first kind of started to, sorry, just turn that away a bit. When I first started to become aware of, at a deeper level, of this kind of thing in GNU and Bob Brinsmead's work and the discovery of the 1919 conference minutes and this kind of thing, was really early 90s. And I remember that people would almost give you the latest GNU magazine in a brown paper bag and pass it over here, and yet I was aware that heaps of people behind the scenes were loving it and talking about it, and it's kind of one of my big frustrations, actually, and one of the big motivations that I'm enjoying doing this series is that people, now that they're retired, are being a lot more open with their thoughts and beliefs, and some pretty big key players have, right here on this show, have said pretty much that nothing happened in 1844, and I'm like, and you can still be an Adventist, really? Oh yeah, of course. And so they even kind of want to somehow justify it, even though they've just kind of done away with it. But maybe you can, subculture. You're still a Seventh-day Adventist, so maybe you can be an Adventist.
I am. There's probably a few of the 28 I don't agree with. I mean, if I'm being inquisitioned as a good theologian, I can always talk my way around them.
Yeah.
But now that I've said this publicly, I'm in trouble. But yeah, look, I am, and I love my church. I'd like to think that my critique of Seventh-day Adventism is a prophetic critique, the same critique of the prophets in the Old Testament, the same critique of Christ, of the church in his day. And that's fine. I think, we have to be truth tellers.
That's the irony, isn't it, for the church to claim it has the truth, but that you find all these theologians and scholars and academics too scared to speak their truth.
Yeah, and look, I am a Seventh-day Adventist, and I'm happy to be a Seventh-day Adventist. I know this might sound difficult to understand. I probably need a bit of psychoanalysis. Yeah, but I love my church.
Yeah.
But I don't have a burden for my church anymore, because my work is sharing the gospel globally. Right? Seventh-day Adventism is my personal affiliation, but I don't necessarily, I'm not as wedded to the debates around Glacia View as others in that sense.
Yeah.
If my name were to be erased from the books of the church, it wouldn't matter all that much to me. I can worship just as well in a whole range of other different churches. So, yeah, I've evolved.
Yeah, but I think what a beautiful thing to find yourself nestled within the Adventism and the culture and the subculture and the friends that you've developed, and still find a home there. I think that's great.
Everyone needs a spiritual home. And there's so many who can't find it that I'm in touch with continually, Seventh-day Adventists. And it's heartbreaking. They go and sit in other churches and try to find that spiritual home, but they can't deal with the Sabbath issue. They can't deal with the state of the dead issue.
Mm.
And they can't sit in Adventist church. I can't sit in Adventist churches often in the pew because I can't stand to hear some of the gobbledygook.
Yeah,
You know, and just ignorance that comes from the pulpit, you know. But other people can't stand to sit there, you know, because they love the gospel and they don't hear it preached.
Yeah.
And they can't sit in other churches because, you know, they still have a Seventh-day Adventist mentality. One of the hardest things when you leave the Seventh-day Adventist church is to leave the sectarian Seventh-day Adventist mentality. You know? And that's why Good News Unlimited doesn't just absolutely flat out refuses to work. That's me. I refuse to work with any ministry. And there's plenty of them that, you know, get in touch with me. Ex-Seventh-day Adventist ministries, if what they want to do is they want to beat up on Seventh-day Adventists. No.
Yeah.
You don't beat up on anyone.
No. Well, yeah. I think one of the things that Fleetwood said in the previous interview was that when you hang out with Adventists that really grasp the gospel, I was just trying to think, what does he call them, gospelers or something? That there's something very special about, you know, engaging with, connecting with, the camaraderie surrounding an Adventist who grasps the gospel. There's something really, really kind of rewarding about that connection.
I had a friend in my very legalistic, during the majority of my life days, who would, a very close friend, who would always say, the liberals are much nicer people. And I couldn't work that out. First of all, I didn't really talk to liberals much. And liberals in my context were people who agreed with Des, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? Gospel people, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? I hope I'm a much nicer person than too.
Well, yeah. And I got news yesterday from Wes Tolhurst. He's going to be on the program. His father was Athol Tolhurst. And I'm all for not beating up on some of these guys as well. I think we can, you know, when we had a great chat with Bob Wolf-Graham and Rick Ferret and Harry Ballas, who can really see the process of movements from a sociological perspective, you almost feel like, you know what, we're not going to really attack or shame people. Let's look at why these things happen. Let's look at why maybe Athol found himself in that position where he felt he needed to purge the church of the ministers in that time. But we don't have to be treating it like a, you know, attack the player. Let's play the ball, not the player.
That's right.
And I think that right up to even people like Ted Wilson, and you know, but we're all trying to do the best we can with what we've got, and it's just wonderful to stumble across people like Des Ford that can just kind of shine this light of goodness, and not on themselves, but the goodness of the teachings that they grasp. There's something uplifting about that, and it's something wonderful to hang around people that grasp that as well.
Yeah, I learned the gospel, Peter, not from Des. And I said this once I was visiting Des and Jill was a bit horrified. I remember.
She's going to say something now.
She will. I love Jill. So, yeah, I didn't learn the gospel from Des. I learned the gospel through a lot of pain and suffering in my life. God had to uproot me from my dependence on church and family and others, and so that I could see and take me through a whole lot of personal pain and brokenness until I could understand the gospel. And I studied from home for about 4 years, just out of my kitchen table. I did 2 master's degrees and a PhD. And a lot of that time I just spent reading the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, trying to put out of my head the little red books, all commentaries, anything I'd ever heard or seen about the message of Jesus Christ, because I needed to understand the message of Jesus Christ for myself. And secondarily, the writings of the Apostle Paul, who interprets the teachings of Jesus, explains them, and particularly interprets the atonement and tells us what Jesus achieved at Calvary. And so I came to an understanding of the gospel, still thinking that Des was the Antichrist.
Wow.
Go figure, because I'd never met the man, and I still had all those prejudices of my past. But you know what Des did? He showed me, he didn't teach me the gospel, but he showed me what the gospel looks like in a life.
Yeah.
You know, when I met Des, I met the most loving, kindest Christian gentleman, the most forgiving man, that person that I'd ever known.
Yeah.
You know, he could never speak of his enemies. He didn't have enemies, but those who considered him an enemy. You know, those who considered him an enemy. He could never speak of his opponents at Glacia View or through the years without saying something good and gracious and kind about them. You know, of the worst one, you know, he would say, and I won't mention them, but he would, I'm sure they've been mentioned in these interviews. Of the worst one, he would say, Ellie, he actually would be walking, he'd stop, he'd put his hand on my shoulder and say, Ellie, he was a good man.
Yeah.
Didn't understand the gospel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now that's Christ-like, isn't it? That really is Christ-like.
Yeah. And I can see why, in many ways, you're the right man for the job there at GNU, because to come from the background of more of a legalistic, you would have seen Des as the Antichrist. It means you fully grasp the difference of where you can come from and where you can go to, and not that you idolize a person, but you can recognize the contribution that he made in a positive light. Yeah,
and I see these comments on your videos, often by very conservative people, some of whom I know, some of whom I don't, some who seem well-meaning and others who seem bitter and twisted. But, you know, I can empathize with all of them because I see myself in them. To judge and condemn them is to judge me. You know, when I was a raving lunatic. I tell you what, I was senior elder of every church I went to. I was known to go to the back and switch the main power off if I didn't like what the preacher was saying, right? So that was the old Ellie.
Lucky I wasn't singing at your church.
Oh, yes, no.
The mic would have been turned off.
Yeah, wrong kind
And were you kind of around the Sydney area? Is that where your churches were? Yeah. And now are you still in that area in Sydney?
No, I'm on the Gold Coast now.
Oh, sorry, you said that. Yeah.
And so, so that's from the kind of background that I come to, and people have said to me, Ellie, you should sort of say, well, I was blind, but now I see, and I was without God, but now it's not like that, Peter. It's not like that. God was with me, and He was blessing me. He's been with me all my life. He's just been guiding me gently and lovingly. You know, and life, once you understand grace, ceases to be about black and white. And it seems, and it's more about shades of grey. You're being drawn through them, you know, gently, and led through them gently towards the light.
Yeah. And I think if people can see and hear your testimony, instead of feeling like, you know, they're on board with Des, say, behind the scenes, and they may be a bit too scared to make the jump to more of a public kind of statement about that. When they hear someone with your story, they can go, oh, hang on, this guy came from that end and is this end, and speaking up with delight about it. That can help people, you know, jump the fence, or get off the fence, or you know, speak a bit more openly if they want to. Not everybody has to. Not everybody has to.
But you know, I always say I'm rather spiritually slow. I mean, it took Paul maybe a few minutes of being knocked off his horse on the road to Damascus, and he kind of got it. But it took me decades.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing is the sectarian, you know, Adventist mentality. It's a world view. It's just very hard to escape from. And you can leave the denomination and still have it. It's a mentality that too often for the you know, the more legalistic side of Adventism is based around fear. I mean, that's when we brought people into the church, showing photos of terrible monsters, and they're going to gobble them up, just before the second coming if they don't keep the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Right? And so why shouldn't we? Okay, that's my Adventism where I came from, right? That was the majority Adventism where I came from. I know that's not true for a lot of others, but why can't we expect to find churches full of people who are fearful in their hearts, and weak in their minds even, and who join for the wrong reason? They join to find safety, to get away from the world, rather to engage with the world in a meaningful way. Right?
Yeah. Do you worship still every week at an Adventist church?
I do. Most weeks.
Say that again?
Most weeks.
Most weeks, yeah. And when you took up the job of what's the official title? Is it president of GNU, or what's CEO, or
managing director?
Managing director, so the MD of GNU. Did you get some flack from your local church at the time, or conference?
Well, there's so many interesting stories. Well, you've hit on a good one, so that's good. Yes. So, see, I'd been trying for a couple of years after God called me to the ministry. God led me to get a couple of master's degrees and a PhD as preparation for the ministry, which would seem excessive, wouldn't it? But God knew why, right? Because he knew I'd need extra credibility in the role he had planned for me. And at the end of it, I couldn't see any future for myself other than being a pastor in a Seventh-day Adventist church. And, well, first of all, as a theologian, so as a professor in some Adventist seminary, I got job offers within the Spanish-speaking world to go and teach in Latin America, in Mexico, in the drug region of Mexico, and I sort of
didn't want to go there.
No, that sort of thing. I received offers from some universities in the USA, both Adventist and non-Adventist. In the USA, only non-Adventist, belonged to other churches, because I was very eminently qualified, but I couldn't get a job in the Seventh-day Adventist church, which is what I wanted. And I kept getting told, well, it's because, when I spoke to the union here, it's because we want our ministers to be tried in the field, right? So we can't let you teach ministers unless you've been tried in the field. So I said, have a church. Yeah, have a church. I publish more than most Seventh-day Adventist theologians publish in a lifetime. I publish more in a few years than most publish in a lifetime in very reputable journals, but I wasn't qualified because I hadn't had a church. So I said, well, okay, try me in the field. I was happy to go and be an intern out at Whoop Whoop, out in the sticks, wherever. I was 46, 47, 48. 45, 46. I was happy to do whatever because God had a call on my life, and I thought that was it. I couldn't see any other future for me other than being a Seventh-day Adventist pastor or a Seventh-day Adventist theologian. But I just couldn't get a call. And I rang all of the right people. I did what I could. It was because I wasn't part of the in crowd. I'm not, I never went to Avondale undergraduate. I did an MA in theology through Avondale through winter schools, but it's not the same. So I wasn't known. I didn't have the connections. Gonzalez isn't as an illustrious and Adventist name as I don't know, Kent, right? For example. So that name wasn't going to get me anywhere. But basically it was because, and I was older, I was overqualified, I was scary, I think, to the administrators. And I had no connections with GNU or DES at that stage. And I just didn't know what God had for me. And then I got this call from Graham Bradford. And he obviously went back and spoke with Jill or Elaine and Des, I don't know who. But, and then I mean, the last thing I could conceive of was working in GNU and Des and for Des.
Because you were still conservative at this stage?
Well, not so much, but I had all the baggage. It's all the hang-up.
Right.
Know? That's why I'm spiritually slow. Some people, they get it like this, and it's really hard for me, all right? Really hard, because, you know, even now I see myself as quite conservative in many ways. I've already told you, you know, suggesting in some ways. Yeah. And I'm a great Seventh-day Adventist, so that's how I see myself. So that'll put some comments in your feed, won't it? So then, and God actually had to work some miracles to convince me that he was calling me to join Good News Unlimited. They were some very clear miracles. My wife didn't agree, right? She didn't agree. So unknown to me, she prayed also, and God sent miracles into her life to confirm that this was his will for me. So I had no choice, Peter. I had to just bow the head and join Good News Unlimited, right? And so I actually didn't want to join Good News Unlimited, and I've been speaking with Len, who was the director, and I said to Len, give me 2 weeks to think about it, right? Because I really didn't want to join Good News Unlimited.
What year was this again? Like about 10 years ago?
About 6 years ago? 7 years ago.
Right.
7 years, so 2000.
So it was just around the time that I first met you at the...
Yeah,
you'd only been on board for maybe a year.
Yeah, that's right. And so I... those 14 days, those 2 weeks, were up on a Friday. That Friday morning, I got a call from a high-up administrator in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, right?
Now they're calling you.
Now they're calling me, right? And he said, look, we recognise that you have a lot of abilities that you could offer. You know, there's a lot you could offer the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We haven't found the right role for you, but he said, I might have a little bit of contract work for you. But, why join GNU and speak to a few dozen people when if you join the Seventh-day Adventist Church, a person like you could have a ministry to thousands?
Who said that to you?
I don't want to name the name. He's currently high up here in Australia. And I said, well, he gave me all sorts of good reasons and why I shouldn't join GNU. And I said, well, some of those reasons are good. I said, but I've got a problem, and that is I have a real heavy conviction on my heart that this is what God wants me to do. God is telling me to join GNU and accept this role. And this administrator, this pastor, said to me, well, God has told me to ring you and tell you not to accept the role. We talked backwards and forwards. He said, well, look, if you join Good News Unlimited, if you ever share a pulpit with Des, these were his words, I can tell you that my child, I won't say whether it's a son or daughter, so we don't identify this person, my child will have to die, their child will die, and their child after them will die before you ever have any role in ministry within the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Whoa.
They were his words.
Woo.
And so it was with a really heavy heart after that phone call that I took my Bible and went out to pray beside a lake because I really needed to make a decision. And God spoke very powerfully to me. And I went back home, I signed the contract. Then when I got home, my wife said, ring this person. Now, this person was an elderly saint, right, who had been the secretary of the Adventist Theological Society, very conservative, obviously, here in Australia for many years. A godly saint, right? And he'd been very kind to us. And she said, ring this person. Now, I didn't know that this person was actually dying, right? And I'd actually rung him for advice a few times, hadn't been able to get through to him. But she said, ring him. So I rang him. I'd already signed the contract. And I said to him, look, I'd signed the contract, but I said, I'm considering joining Good News Unlimited. This is a person who'd been to Avondale with Des. knew Des, but was very conservative, thought that Des had caused great harm to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I said, what do you think? Do you think I should join Good News Unlimited? He said, oh, no, I don't think you should. You know, if you knew the harm that Des Ford has caused the church, you know. But he said, because it's you, right, and I respect you, he said, I'm going to pray about it tonight. The next day, he rang me. And he couldn't speak. He was on a ventilator. He was that ill, you know. Wow. Eliezer. Oh, hello. I prayed about it, right? And he said to me, the Lord has shown me that you must join Good News Unlimited.
Wow.
And I told my wife, she broke down in tears because she had prayed that if God wanted me to join Good News Unlimited, that this person, who was the last person on earth who should have been supportive, would agree. Mm. He died not long afterwards.
Wow. And
so I joined Good News Unlimited, and about a week after I joined Good News Unlimited, I had an offer from the division that if I left the employment of Good News Unlimited, I would be given. Now, this is a backdoor offer, not directly by an officer of the division, but they basically said, look, we've been having some meetings, you know, in the division, and I happen to be in one of them. And you know, if you leave Good News Unlimited, we're happy to offer you the position of Deputy Vice-Chancellor of a certain university. And I said, well, the boat has sailed, and I'm on the gospel ship, and that's it. I've made my choice.
Wow, good on you.
Yeah. So did I get some pressure? I guess so. And then the pastor of the church of which I was a member at the time, went to see the conference president and asked, you know, and he was a mate of mine. He's a good man, but he was trying to do the right thing. Should we let, you know, he said, is it okay if I let Eliezer preach at my church? Because he preaches a good message, and you know, he's a member and a friend. And what he was told was kind of, well, you haven't heard it from me, but no, it's not okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the doors started closing. Isn't it sad that you'd spent a lifetime desiring to be contributing of your life and time and energy into the church that seemed to just kind of fob you off, and then last minute they say, well, go out, you know, you got to go and do some groundwork and be a pastor of a local church kind of thing, and you said, I'll do that, and they still didn't organise that, and only when you're gone do they realise the value that they've lost.
Well, I'm not sure that they realised the value that they'd lost. I think they didn't want GNU to have the value, which is
same
a
thing.
different thing. But, you know, that was just a fob off, that whole thing about that they wanted people tried in the field, because I was well qualified. And, you know, if I had been a lady, you know, I would have got a job like that, because, you know, they don't need to be tried in the field. You know, that's not a sexist remark. I mean, I think that's a good thing, you know. Mm-hmm. They need a bit of a leg up.
They should have offered you that good thing as well.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it was just that I was a little bit too outside the box for them, a little bit too scary. And a good thing too, because I can tell you, in these interviews, I can tell you the truth.
I know, I love it.
I don't have to fog it, you know, fog it around and muck around.
I love it. And that's what I say to people. I'm not trying to say to people, leave the church, or I in my passionate moments, I say things a bit like that, I guess. But when my default me is be your own person, but try and be in a place in your life where you're not having to act, where you're not being an actor. Don't go to your grave in your last words thinking, well, my whole life I've just had to pretend I was something I wasn't.
Jesus' diatribe against the Pharisees is entirely based on that. Mm. A hypocrite isn't someone that says one thing and does something else.
Yeah.
Because we all do that. You know, we all fall short of who we say we want to be.
Yeah.
A hypocrite is someone who pretends to be someone who they're not.
That's
who
right.
Pretends to hold beliefs that
That's
they
right.
go because of their paycheck or because of the community they belong
Yeah.
to, because of pressure, from whatever source.
They're
right?
acting.
Yeah. And so you read what Jesus has to say about the Pharisees and the hypocrites. But something else you just said about, you don't want people to leave the Adventist church. Well, I don't want people to leave the Adventist church either, or any church, really. In fact,
But you and I would support their choice if they did want to.
absolutely.
It's like, you be your own person.
But in the
Be
role
true.
that I have now, I mean, there's been countless instances where I've been contacted by people who grew up Seventh-day Adventists and they left the church in their teens or whatever. And, they've come to a point in their lives when they, they're reflecting and they feel they need something more in their lives and they want to go back to church. And they ask me for advice as to what church they should go to.
Yeah.
And I asked them a few questions. And if it seems to me that they've had good experiences in the Seventh-day Adventist church, and they remember having a good spiritual home there, there's countless people that I've actually sent back to the Seventh-day Adventist church. I'll get no credit from that.
No.
But there's countless people. But if they've had bad experiences, and when I say I send them back, I try to buffer them and send them back to a more gospel-oriented church. But if people have had negative experiences and they've been burnt out and they just need connection with Christ, I'm happy for them to go to a Pentecostal church, a Baptist church, a Uniting church, whatever it is, as long as the gospel is preached and they feel that they can form Christian community there.
As long as the main dish is the gospel.
That's right.
Does GNU run any programs, gatherings?
No, we used to.
Yeah, I remember in the 90s.
Yeah, we used to, but we don't have the big draw card anymore, that being Des. We used to have meetings at Milton on a Sabbath afternoon, and you'd get a few older saints coming, people who loved Des, and they were great, but even then you might have 30 people coming. But if I was taking the meeting, you'd basically just have the GNU crowd who were organising it. So you might have a dozen people. So it just didn't become economically feasible to do that. And so this is where we've had to make the choice to focus our efforts to a newer generation that engage at a digital level. It allows us now to, I don't have a ministry to thousands, I've got a ministry to millions. See, remember what I was told? Yeah. Really, that's the reality of it. But we haven't forgotten, those godly saints that supported GNU all these years and who were blessed by Des. We've got a secret list that you can't get on, by the way, if anyone's listening, you can't get on, of about 70 people who receive a DVD of Des every month. Free of charge from GNU, and that's because years ago when I joined, I asked our supporters who couldn't access digital sort of media on a computer, and those who couldn't, we feed them through that means. We do send out a physical newsletter as well, but the way that we mainly minister is through daily devotions, which are a mixture of Des and me. And also, we're about to start up a series of online lessons to introduce people to Christianity in a gospel and Christ-centered way. And it's targeted at a global audience, which means it'd be good for Westerners, but it'll also be good for Hindus or Muslims. And it really goes, they're quite simple, but they go through the issues of what's unique about Christianity. We talk about the cross, we talk about a God who loves you so much he dies for you. We talk about grace as a unique Christian concept. We talk about resurrection, the resurrection. We talk about Christianity being a public faith, not a private mystical religion. There's evidence, it's a historical faith, all those sort of things. So that's where we start off from.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, when you're looking to hire a social media expert, give me a call.
Okay.
It turns out I'm quite good at it.
Well, that's good.
But I think it's because I'm just loving it, and I was thrown. All my gigs were just lost 2 months ago, and I had to kind of throw myself into something new. So
we do a lot of that.
I'm doing, like I do 8 shows. There's the SDA Q&A is one show with 4 to 6 interviews, but I do 17 interviews a week. And cross fingers, we might even have Julia Gillard on one of my programs in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm loving it. But do you know what? We've been talking for an hour and a half, and I haven't even gone to the actual questions that I was promising people I would. Will we do that? We may have answered all the questions, but I was very keen to chat about what your experience was as an Adventist growing up. You've touched on it, but I want to go back to when you were real young. Tell me about what it was like growing up as a Seventh-day Adventist and where you grew up.
Let me go right back then. My parents are from Spain, and they grew up in post-Civil War Franco dictatorship Spain.
Wow.
Right? So my parents, both my father and my mother, were brutalised. They saw relatives lined up against the wall and shot.
Oh, my God.
The death car would roll through the streets every morning in the town so you could throw in your dead relatives who died of hunger because Franco starved the town for years. And so when you grow up like that, you can either go 2 ways. You become hard, very, very hard and cynical, right, and harsh, or you can become very codependent. And my father went the first way, my mother went the second way.
Wow.
And so I thought I had the perfect parents, and they both loved me as best they could, and the best family. And I thought all families were like mine. And I thought I had the best church. So my family was very black and white, very judgmental. I grew up very judgmental, right? The old Ellie would have looked at you and judged you for your hair, and you were feminine wolf, and this would be the old Ellie, right? And like, where does that come from? But I couldn't, I'd be a little kid, I'd be walking along the street holding my parents' hand, and we'd walk over someone who was overweight, and my father would lean in and say to me, see that lady, I guess, she has no self-control.
Yeah, that subtle kind of judgment. Yeah.
That's how I grew up, very judgmental, very legalistic, and of course, very afraid of the outside world. Remember what I said about how my parents grew up? Everything and everyone was out to get us. So I was an ideal candidate for a very legalistic sort of Adventism. The church where I grew up was an ethnic church in Sydney, a Spanish-speaking church. It was a Latin American church. Beautiful people, by the way, beautiful people.
Were you involved at all with Endless Praise and the Spanish singers and that kind of community?
Yeah, they came out of my church.
Yeah.
I wasn't involved with the choir as such, but I knew them all personally.
I must have been to that church because I remember going there as a young boy, maybe, I guess 16, I don't know, teenager anyway, and going to the church, and the Spanish singers were singing that day, and it was like a bit of a, because they've travelled all the time, but this was their home church, and they were singing at the home church. It was packed. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Man.
And I love those guys. I mean, I grew up with them. They're my childhood friends. Yeah. At least the originals. And so what you need to know is that this church represented southern world, the Christianity of the global south, if you like. Right? So you want to know who elects Ted Wilson?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Go to a general conference session and have a look at the nature of the faces, right? They're from the global south. So that's why I believe Seventh-day Adventism is unredeemable and unreformable, barring a miracle of God, right? Because it's a political process.
Yeah.
Right? 98% of the people who vote for your leaders of the global church are people who come from patriarchal cultures, authoritarian cultures, Roman Catholic cultures, and their version of Adventism is thoroughly grounded in that sort of thinking, and that's the church that I grew up in. All right, I know there's a whole conference in the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Ukraine who keeps the Levitical laws. Right, so if you're a woman, once a month you're not allowed to go to church.
An Adventist church.
Yes. if you have a baby, you can't go to church with your baby, until your time is completed of purification. You are not allowed to drive a car on Sabbath, right? You cannot pick fruit off a tree. People have been censured officially in church for all of these things. Right? Now, we don't get told about that, but these are the kind of, that's an extreme, but it gives you an idea of the kind of people who vote for Ted Wilson and our current leadership.
Well, that's why I'm convinced Ted Wilson will get in again.
Probably,
people say he won't.
They love him. And so, what you're doing here in these interviews and here in Australia, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we exist in a little bubble. We're deluding ourselves if we think that we matter, or whatever opinions we have about the gospel or the church or what happened in Glacia View matters one iota at a global church level.
Yeah, I agree.
Barring a miracle of God.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. 100%. And it frustrates people. It frustrates me. I'll speak for me, not other people. But when I hear people speaking from within the bubble with such great confidence and authority of what they think is going to happen politically, if you haven't grasped what actually the church is, who influences the church, who does the voting in the church, where's the money going in the church,
Well, the North American division has the money, but it doesn't have the delegates.
No.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah. So they can do what they like with the money, but it'll be always voted down anyway.
Yeah. So we're talking about my childhood. So that's a church I grew up in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in year 10 when Glacia View happened, right? And it was really interesting, Peter, because I was at Sydney Adventist High School, later to be called Sydney Adventist College. And around Glacia View, all these changes happened in staff. Now, this is all in retrospect. I now kind of understand why, and I might be off the mark in some of the specifics, but, you had a really, like Arnold Rye.
Yeah.
What a godly, gospel-loving man. He was principal. He went.
Yeah.
Then Brett Eccleston came in. A godly, gospel-loving, kindly, wise man, right? Brett? No. Ross Eccleston.
Yeah.
Ross Eccleston, sorry. And I think he lasted a year or two, and then there was some excuse made and he went. And that was just around the time of Glacia View, right? And around that time too, a couple of Bible teachers came into the Bible department at Sydney Adventist High School. Very overqualified people, both with PhDs, overqualified. They should have been teaching at our seminaries. But obviously, the administrators didn't want them polluting the minds of our future pastors, and they didn't want them in churches. And so my Bible teachers were Milton Hook.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And, who's the other one? A godly, softly spoken man. Milton Hook and, it'll come to me. Jill, if you're there, you might remember him, a good friend of Des. Also a doctor, Dr. Trevor Lloyd, that's it.
Oh, Trevor Lloyd. Yes, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
he's going to be on the show later.
Yeah, and they were teaching me, right, in Bible, just after Glacia View, right? And, they were very formative for me. They really challenged me intellectually, but I thought that they were wrong, liberals.
Yeah.
But they really challenged me, right? They challenged me. They gave me reasons for my faith. They grounded me in Christianity, and they planted seeds that only bore fruit decades later.
Isn't that ironic that they were moved away from areas where they wouldn't influence the students at the kind of college university level? So they influenced you, and you later went on to be the managing director of GNU.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that, but yeah. God's got a great sense of humour. He's got a great sense. We don't think it's funny at the time, but
No, I know.
He's got a great laugh. And so I graduated from high school, and I thought I was the best defender of 1844 there was.
Mm.
You know, I had reasons for 1844 that not even the scholars at Andrews had.
And this is just finishing high school.
Yeah, I could explain to you in detail the meaning of the numbers, the days at the end of Daniel chapter 12, right, 13, right. Not many people can do that.
No.
Right. I was so conservative that I held to the old view of the daily. Some people might know what that means.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the day of my baptism, when I was 12, this is going back to when I started high school. In fact, the local church pastor, Pastor Ricardo Olivares, who died earlier this year, is a good man. He the Sabbath, we were being baptized in the afternoon in a swimming pool. So on the Sabbath, he got me at the front, and just he sprang it on me. He said, "Now, Eliezer," he said to the people, 300 people there, whatever, 200. It was a big church. I'm going to show you the caliber of the baptismal candidates that we are producing in this church. Eliezer, would you explain to us the prophecy of the 2300 days and the investigative judgment?
At 12.
And so I wrote a go. I explained it all. There you go, off the top of my head. And that's
at the age of 12.
Yeah, 12. Yeah. This is my Jesus at the temple moment, right? But I was batting for the wrong team. Anyway, fast forward, I finished university, and
why didn't you go after year 12? Why didn't you go to Avondale?
Because Avondale was too corrupted and polluted.
Ah, right. And if you had gone to Avondale, what would have your first year would have been? 81, 82.
Yeah.
We would have been students together.
Wow. How about that? That would have been great.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't have been friends, not then.
No, you would have been judging my long hair.
I would have been judging a lot.
I would have punched you in the face.
I would have deserved it. Anyway, I finished high school, and I'm just becoming more and more set in my conservative ways, right? Because now we're in the early 80s, and all these winds of theological debate are raging in the church. And I remember I used to go to George Burnside's meetings at Warunga in his home on a Sabbath afternoon.
Yeah.
And he'd proudly show us his printing press, and I'd take, as many of his little pamphlets. They were treasure, they were gold, right? Home with me, leave a little donation. I remember once I forgot to leave a donation. He stood over me. Anyway, so, I thought Burnside was, he was the true defender of the faith.
Yeah. And he was a great guy, actually. Like,
he was.
On a side note, yeah.
Within his paradigm, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's a funny thing. Every time, from when I was a child, as long as I can remember, when I was 6 or 7 years old, every time I'd sit in church and hear a sermon about Calvary, my eyes would well up and I'd just start to weep. Every time. And as I got older, that really bothered me. Because I didn't understand why.
Wow. Yeah.
And now, as I look back, I understand why. Because my faith was a knowledge-based faith. And God was telling me that it was that the center of my faith was all wrong, that the center was the cross, and that true faith isn't about what you know, but it's about a relationship. It's about your heart. It's about your feelings. It's about your emotions.
Your heart was being worked on.
Yeah.
Without you even realizing.
It's because somehow there was this void in my life that I was missing the gospel. And I was weeping, not just because of the beauty of Christ, which I just couldn't seem to access, but because of this void that was in my life, the void of the gospel. I mean, I had all these strange ideas about salvation. My idea of righteousness by faith is that you've got to try and be as good as you can, and if you fulfil the commandments to a standard of 87%, well, in the investigative judgment, Christ, if you're lucky and you've done good enough, you've passed a threshold. If you're lucky, Christ will say, "No, he's all right. He's with me, and I'll top up the rest with 13% of my own righteousness." He's good to go.
Yeah. I like that. That threshold theory. That's a good one.
That is.
That might have run within the more conservative church,
Peter,
if you'd gone down that path.
Peter, it did run. It wasn't my own theory.
But theirs was higher than 87%.
Oh, I don't know.
What I'm saying, by lowering the percentage, you might have had some followers.
That's right. So that was me growing up, and Christ had to do a huge work in my life to uproot me from all these safety barriers that I put around myself, so I was unreachable by the gospel. He had to remove my dependence on my family. When I married my wife, my family disowned me. Now that's a biggie when you belong to a migrant family and it's just you, your mum, and your brother.
Who disowned you?
My parents.
When what?
Brother.
When
I married my now wife, Anna.
Because she was considered more of a liberal?
No. It's complicated. Because they hadn't picked her, because I told my family was very controlling.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And so I lost my family.
Wow.
And then I encountered sexual abuse in the church. You know, I discovered that there was sexual abuse that had been going on and being covered up that I'd never known about. And because they knew that I knew, they came after me. And that was, and back then there weren't the protocols we have today, and I didn't know what to do. Should I call the conference president? Should I ring the police? But hang on, I don't have two witnesses, you know, I've only got third-hand information. It was true, right, as a later event showed. What do you do?
Yeah.
So as a young man, that, you know, so you lose your family.
Yeah.
You lose your church. I spent 6 months just going to the Blue Mountains and slumming around parks and just having my own private church because I couldn't bear to go to a church to go to. And then, God found a little church at Concord. It was dying. Got a dozen people every Sabbath for Sabbath school, all octogenarians. Very conservative, by the way. But you know what?
I sang there once.
Yeah. Godly saints.
Yeah.
They loved me and my wife.
Yeah.
They loved us. They loved us back. You know, God used them. So, you know, let's not judge. Let's not point the finger. God used them. And that helped to heal me. And, to bring me back.
And, you know, and that's again what we're saying. That was within the Adventist church. You found healing and a nourishing environment where you were being accepted for who you are, loved, cherished, and kept safe. And those pockets can happen anywhere in the world, in any kind of movement that, on the one hand, might be doing disastrous, terrible things. You can find shelter in the storm.
Providence, you know, that's how God works.
Yeah.
So I lost my church. I lost my faith in church. I lost my family. And the only thing that I hadn't lost was my money. But God took care of that. You see, I mean, my first career, I was a teacher. I taught at Sydney Adventist College there for a bit, 3 years. And then I went into corporate life and became a middle manager at many different functions. And then I went off and, got tapped on the shoulder by people with a bit of money, said, "Oh, you've got a few skills in business, and why don't you start some entrepreneurial, some blue sky international entrepreneurial businesses? We'll consider backing you up to a point." So I started some big IT businesses, big, at the stage of where they were in development, very ambitious IT businesses. I'd travel around the world, sat opposite millionaires and asked them to chuck $1 million at me, in a foyer of hotels in Dubai, that sort of thing. So I've had a lot of fun. But of course, when you're in entrepreneurship, investors don't want you to take a salary if you can't invest.
Yeah.
They want you to have skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
So for a few years, I had no income, and but that was okay. I had a multi-million-dollar property portfolio, and just when we were at a critical stage in the development of these businesses, and there were multiple businesses, it was very risky and very ambitious. The GFC hit in around the 2005, 6, 7, around then. They wiped me out completely. I had nothing in the bank. All I had was a mortgage. Had no income. And I remember I'd been managing director and CEO and company secretary of all these businesses. And I remember, I kept a spreadsheet. I applied to 300 jobs. Never got a phone call from one of them. By the way, I'm good at writing. So I would write CVs for all my friends and covering letters. They'd all get jobs, but not me, right? 300. I was willing to stack shelves at Woolies. I didn't have money for petrol to drive to Woolies. I was willing to stack shelves at Woolies. I had a young family, 2 little kids. I was willing to be a secretary and just do filing or whatever. I just needed some sort of income. And I was applying for all jobs, big and small. Couldn't get a phone call. And I remember I got a call back from the president or the managing director of the Minerals Council of Queensland for a job I've applied for. It was a $300,000 a year job. And he said, "Oh, hello, is this Eliezer Gonzalez?" I said, "Yes, it is." He said, "Look, this is from the Minerals Council of Queensland. I'm giving you a call. I know you applied for our job, and the truth is that we're not going to offer it to you because there's no way that we think we could ever keep someone as talented as you. But I just wanted to ring you and have a chat with you because your CV is just so amazing." That's where I started to lose my hair, right?
They didn't want to invest in you because they knew that within a year you'd be headhunted somewhere else.
There was a reason why God needed to bring me to that point, because when you're in management and business, and my whole church life, I've been senior elder of every church I was in, all that sort of thing. My whole church life was based on control.
Yeah, right.
And God needed to remove the last thing that I depended on. I lost my faith in church, lost my dependence on family, that I had as a man, you've got your work, you've got your talent, your skills, your qualifications. I had all that in business. And I remember one day I was, like I said, I had no more money to go and get food from the fridge. The bank, Westpac, had just rung because they were going to start repossession action on the house.
Wow.
And I was kneeling alone one afternoon at the sofa in my living room. And my wife was out getting a bit of part-time work somewhere. And I was having a Job moment, shaking my fist at God, saying, why? I've always served you. I've always done what you've wanted me to do. Why are you letting this happen to me? Then I heard the voice of God, not audible, but I know it was the voice of God. And he said these words, "My son, I have you where I want you, and now I want you in the ministry." Well, when I told my wife, she burst out into tears. The last thing she wanted to do was be a pastor's wife, right? The Lord also told me, because I argued with the Lord. Job does that. I said, "Lord, I have no money. I can't go and study. I'm 45 or whatever, 44, whatever I was, right? How can I do this? Right? All I have is I've got a huge mortgage in Sydney and I've got a mortgage here, and it's not possible. I can't go and leave my family and go and study at Avondale." And so the Lord said to me, "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. And by the way, that house in Sydney that you took off the market last week because it was worth less than your mortgage, he said, put it back on the market. I did. That same week it was sold and I cleared $50, right? I'd had it on the market for a year previously. My wife had applied for a job, a particular job, and she'd been knocked back. I said to her, ring them up and have another chat to them. Why? They knocked me back. I said, don't worry. And in fact, but they called her back, right? And they gave her a better job than what she had applied for. Mm. And then it was still not enough money to keep going. But for several years, while I studied 2 master's degrees and a PhD, I did my PhD in 18 months. Wow. Macquarie University wouldn't let me graduate.
What was your thesis, synopsis, whatever?
It was from Macquarie University. It was in the Department of Ancient History. It was on early Christian history, and I looked at changing views of the state of the dead from the New Testament period during the first 2 centuries of Christianity.
Right.
Yeah. So during that time, people who knew me and knew that God had called me to the ministry started putting just giving us money. Basically, I had to learn humility, often anonymously. Sometimes we knew who they were, but they basically kept my family going for 4 years while I studied. I mean, I remember. I mean, what do you do when God calls you to the ministry? You call the conference secretary. God has called me to the ministry. What should I do? And it's,
we've got a special fund just for you.
No. Talk to Avondale. So I ring Avondale. And what do they go and enroll in the grad dip, and you've got to come and live here for 2 years or whatever it is, or 3 years. And I said, stuff that. I didn't have money for that, let alone I didn't want to be away from my family at my age. So instead of that, God had told me that he said, I will open up the doors and your job is to step through them as quickly as possible. So I applied and got a scholarship to do a PhD, to do a Master of Arts in Early Christian History, which is kind of New Testament, at Macquarie University, all paid for with it. And so I did that. At the same time, I did an MMA in theology at Avondale. I completed both in 1 year together, 2 MAs in 1 year. So if that's not God's doing, I'm not that smart. I know some people think I'm not that smart. That's what God's doing. And then I completed my PhD in 18 months, and the university, the academic council didn't want to let me submit my PhD because they thought it was too soon. No one could do it so quickly, and it'd bring discredit to the Department of Ancient History. So I spent the next 18 months travelling the world, using Macquarie University money, because I applied and won all these scholarships, presenting at Oxford University, at the University of Amsterdam, all over the world, really. Presenting on theology and early Christian history. That was great. And this is all on a Commonwealth scholarship, paid for. So I actually got paid. I don't remember what it was, $23,000 per year to do my PhD and just slum around the world and present at conferences and lecture world-leading experts on things that I was only just learning about. It's fantastic. God is good.
You, from where some doors were shut, the whole world was open to you.
That's right.
Let me look at my list of questions, because I think we're covering them all quite nicely. I wanted to go back a little bit to Glacia View. As we were talking about, you were too young to really grasp what was going on. Did you later on, though, start doing a bit of an in-depth analysis? I know you would now, but at what point did you start going, hang on, who were the players here? What was the politics going on? What's the whole thing about the consensus statement? What happened with that little 10-point statement thrown in the last minute there? When did you start exploring that, and what did you discover?
Well, until about 15 years ago, or not 15, even more recent than that, Glacia View was where Des was tried for heresy, and his views were cast out and rejected as unbiblical, and he was essentially declared to be, pernicious and evil, and a bad influence on the church, and God's truth was vindicated. That was Glacia View, right? And even though Des might have been right on some things like the gospel, he was still wrong. He was still wrong on the sanctuary and prophecy and all those sorts of things. You know? And so in my mind, I separated the gospel from prophecy and the sanctuary and all that sort of thing. You can't, right? Well, I know there's a lot of people that do that. You can't. Glacia View was only ever about the gospel. But to your question, where I started looking at Glacia View and what actually happened, it wasn't until I had actually joined Good News Unlimited. They could have really regretted getting me in, by the way.
I know.
Yeah.
It's only a Trojan horse.
Yeah. But it's like Paul, the church, the early Christian church didn't want to accept Paul for a while because he was the great persecutor, How could he, now say he's on our team? It's a bit like that, isn't it? It's only as Jill and Des, they educated me about Glacia View.
So, wow. So it was quite late in the piece.
Yeah, I read, after I joined GNU, I read Milton Hook's biography, which I thought was a very good analysis.
Yeah, it's a great book.
But it didn't really sink in. But Jill's explanations and Des's explanations were what really helped it to sink in.
Wow. So as that, I guess I'm wanting you to tease out a little bit that now you've got the information, it has sunk in. What are your thoughts now on what went on then? What went on? What really went on?
What went on was a setup. It was an ambush. I mean, quite clearly, Des was lied to at multiple levels. Not just that if he went to the US, he would be able to come back and have his job back at Avondale, but he was also lied to in terms of what Glacia View was all about. He was lied to in terms of the preparation of the Glacia View manuscript. I mean, they didn't read it, right? The administrators didn't read it. He was lied to that this would be a place where, his peers, his theological peers would consider the issues. Most of the people there were administrators, right? And they were the majority. And then of the theologians, the majority didn't have the guts to actually stand up and say what they truly believed. Most of them actually supported Des. Yeah. Right? But, you've got when you've got the general conference president running the show, you've got to say the right things, haven't you? Right? It must have been very hard for the members of the Sanhedrin at the trial of Jesus with Caiaphas there.
Yeah.
Right?
Do we speak up?
Yeah, it's that kind of pressure. I think Glacia View was the elder Wilson's attempt to preserve the church, the global church, from splitting at all costs.
Do you think the church would have split if he hadn't acted the way he did?
Yes, I think so. Because, I remember as a kid back then, there was just such a love of the gospel. And back then I didn't fully understand the issues, but when I heard, I've said when I would hear a message about Calvary, my eyes would well up and I'd weep, and you actually heard a lot of good gospel from a lot of godly pastors back then. A lot of them were the ones who left. Yeah. Right? And there was a real interest in theological issues. Yeah. Real interest in the Bible. And that's one of the beefs, I guess, one of the points of discomfort I have with non-conservative Adventist churches. It seems that they're too full of Adventists who have been too burnt, who aren't engaged anymore, who aren't interested. Yeah, and there's no real interest in going deep into Scripture. There's no power in that kind of church. No, there really isn't.
The Liberals have more. I remember it's more about worship style, that and worship, and which is good. It's all good to have worship and stuff like that. But I yearn. I wish that, you know, like I think I've mentioned in other interviews that when Dad was a lecturer at college up here, and as a young boy, you know, I literally would walk around the campus on Sabbath afternoon and I'd watch these guys in their flares and their purple shirts and their crazy hairstyles, and they'd be Bibles open and having conversation like dotted around, men and women, young men and women, all just at college age students. So they're just kids really. But for my 8-year-old brain was watching this going, wow, there's something happening here that's exciting, and I'd listen in on little conversations and stuff. And
Glacier View killed that, and it hasn't happened since.
Yeah, Eric Magnuson lived next door, Hokins, Lindsay's, Irvines, Drewers, Patrick's, all here, Hugheses, and it was vibrant and wonderful, and that's gone.
See, I know from the stories and the testimonies that I receive and the videos and the reports, I know that GNU is creating that in Africa.
Yeah,
I know we're creating in India. I know we're creating that in Belgium, right?
Yeah.
I know that that's happening. And you know what? God doesn't care about the colour of your skin.
Of course not.
There's people who say to me, well, shouldn't GNU just be focusing here in Australia, closer to home and all that? Well, the Gospel Commission is going to all the world, and God doesn't care about the colour of your skin. You know, Jesus says, cast the net out, and he wants you to cast out the net out where the fish are, not where you think they are, not where you think the net should be cast out. You know, so where people are most hungry, we're happy to target them. But yeah, so Glacia View killed all of that.
And what's sad is this is interview number 37 of this series, and we are passionately discussing this stuff. And so it's not that there's not interest there, there's just fear to talk about it. So I'm hoping to run some, and I would love to invite you to be one of the guest speakers. I'm going to do some online meetings within the SDAQ&A kind of little community we've got here, where it'll be all done online and Zoom and stuff, where we'll have a little bit of a church service once a month to start with, but hopefully once a week later, where I'll invite guest speakers to just share the joy of what they believe the gospel's about, you know. Have a bit of music, have some spoken word, have some discussion, because I think there is a void.
There is, there really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a gap, there's a hole. Hey, I'm wanting to ask what kind of things are you guys doing to ensure that Des's legacy is preserved?
Well, we've been over the last few years, even a few years before Des's death, we've been collecting as much of Des's content as we can and carefully curating it. We've got an Amazon server with a vast treasure trove of everything we can find. Trying to get every article Des wrote, every audio that we can find, every video. We've got an in-house producer, Duncan Wood, who's also a director, and he's been now for a couple of years also busily digitising, old media, so we can have as much of Des's content as possible. On the GNU website, on goodnewsunlimited.com, we have a lot of Des's material, but we only have his gospel, his generic gospel material. We don't have the more Adventist, controversial material. What would be controversial? Where he's talking more to Adventists, let's say. Right. Controversial or not controversial. But we have all that material hidden away on our Amazon servers. Right. So we have been now for the last, it's been almost a year, we've been developing a website where we're going to make all of this available, all of this material available to people as complete an archive as possible of everything that Des ever spoke or wrote.
Oh, that's fabulous! Yeah,
we're still working on it.
Yeah,
and certainly we're still curating the material. We've had a lot of technical issues, we're hopeful that in the next month or so we'll have a fully working product. We thought we had it a couple of weeks ago, but it wasn't to be because the videos were downloading instead of streaming, which is not what you want, as you would know. And the audio wasn't working, so that's not good. But more broadly, we want to keep Des's legacy alive by keeping his ministry alive. And I don't know what it is within the Adventist community, but every now and then someone contacts me and says, "I've heard GNU is dying," and whatnot. No, it's not dying. It's very nicely alive.
What's your email list now? You were saying that when you joined, well, like in early 80s, it was 200,000, and then it dropped way off. Is it slowly building up again?
Yes.
Not that email lists are a measure of growth, by the way. The emails are almost last century.
Depends on the purpose of the lists, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I know, and we're looking for an alternative media to email for the future generations, but we haven't quite hit on what it is.
Yeah.
My son keeps telling me it's a mix of everything, which is there to manage. But anyway, as of this morning, it was 55,000. But these aren't supporters necessarily. They're people who are receiving our daily devotions and our messages. Right.
Are you getting feedback from people? Like there's interactions coming back. We're enjoying this. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pastors around the world who use our blogs and our devotions as the structure around which they do church with their congregations, particularly in the poorer countries of the world where they don't have access to resources. A lot of people use these as witnessing resources, so they're amplified. But as you say, email is not where it's at. Really, we use a whole broad platform of social media and the website and whatnot. So as I said earlier, by tallying it all the different our audience up, we know that we're reaching about 1 million people every month.
Yeah, wow.
So they're the people we are actually reaching with the gospel.
Yeah.
So that blows my mind.
Yeah.
And the reality is that Des's messages, because these are a mixture of mine and Des's. Des's messages are reaching more people in a month. And now that he's waiting the resurrection, than possibly they did in over years during his lifetime.
Yeah. And that's only going to grow.
Yeah, and that's our intention. So we're developing this website so that the viewers here who are more engaged with Adventist issues will have access to all of those things. And Jill is going to be also making available all the material that she's scanning from all the many boxes of material that Des had, historical letters about Glacia View, whatever she's comfortable releasing, will be releasing via this website as well. Although it'll grow over time. We can't put everything on at once.
No, organically. Man, I've really enjoyed this afternoon conversation with you.
I have too.
And it's been a lot of fun. And if I can help in any way, I'd like to welcome also, we've got a whole bunch of people from the former, I think they're called former SDA. I apologise. I'm about to say thank you and welcome. A whole bunch have just joined the group. So I'm saying welcome, and what's the name of the group again? It's not very organised of me, is it? But there's a lot of people joining that are former Adventists. I was checking the stats the other night because we've grown like from 100 to 1,200 in only 2 months.
That's all right. Peter, the first Christians were former Jews. It's all right to be former something.
Something, yeah.
No worries.
Well, and it's run by a former himself. But when I was looking at the stats, there's only 400 from Australia. So we're getting numbers all around the world, which is lovely to see. And there's from agnostics to conservatives to admin, to scholars, to former Adventists. It's a really interesting, eclectic mix of people, and I'm enjoying the little subgroup that's growing up where we're kind of becoming friends and enjoying having conversations. We all have very divergent views, and I even shudder to share some of mine.
You know, they don't matter, Peter. This
No,
is the
because
beauty of what you're doing. They don't matter. If you'd taken a theological poll of the disciples on the around the table at the Last Supper, right? You know, you wouldn't have thought that they'd been together for 3 years, right? And I mean, they're about to betray Jesus. They're about to run away. They're about to abandon him, right? Yet before that happens, in his great high priestly prayer, Jesus says to the Father, you know, those that you've given me, you know, I haven't lost them.
Yeah, exactly.
They are yours.
Yeah.
They are yours, right? And so that's what we need to understand, that we are united. I mean, we are united because of the gospel, not because of what we believe about any other topic.
The side.
We are Christians, and we accept the good news of Jesus Christ. I mean, Jesus said, you know, by this shall all men know that you're my disciples, because you can tick off 28. No.
Yeah.
There's no knowledge criteria here. There's no doctrinal criteria, and doctrine is important. It's important to know the teachings of the Bible.
Yeah.
But but that's the fruit. That's the result. You'll grow in your knowledge there.
Yeah.
Because you have accepted the gospel, and that God sends the Holy Spirit into your life. It's his job to teach you all truth. And, you know, I always remember what Peter Rowan felt once. I went to a seminar he took once, and he drew a circle on the board, right? He put a cross in the middle, and he said, it's kind of like this. And he put 2 X's on different parts of the circumference, opposing parts of the circumference of the circle. And he drew an arrow coming in towards the center, towards the cross, if you can visualize that. He said, it's like this. So this might be me, right? And I'm moving towards the center, towards the cross here. And I've been a lifelong Seventh-day Adventist, you know, and I've got my secret sins and whatever it might be. But, you know, the Holy Spirit is drawing me towards Christ at the center. And this might be you. And you're coming at it from a completely different position. And the Holy Spirit is drawing you towards Christ, towards the cross. And it looks as if we're going in opposite directions, right? Because of our life experiences. At any one point, we don't believe the same necessarily about everything. We don't agree with each other. It's so easy for me to judge you, right? Because we're traveling in opposite directions. But you know what? We're all headed to the same place. And you can only understand that when you understand the gospel. And that's why it's so important.
Mate, I reckon you're only just getting started, as in with your work. I think you're going to be increasing with power and passion, and I can feel it brewing within you. Like it's been there since you were 12, sharing, you know, something that you don't believe in now, but you are passionate about it, and it's been brewing. It's like you were saying, you're a slow boil. But but as you're beginning now to boil over, I can feel that it's gonna. People are about to see Ellie just, you know, explode with joy and power. I don't want them to see
Ellie. I want them to see Christ.
Oh yeah, but I'm talking about as a conduit, as a vessel. You know,
that's what we want. It was quite funny in the advertising for this interview. My position was administrator. Good News Unlimited. I looked at that and I went.
I know.
Like, God didn't bring someone into GNU with no passion. Administrators have no passion. They're bean counters, right? I mean, if there'd been no passion, GNU would not be around anymore. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
God's put the gospel in my heart, and passion. It burns very brightly. And I'm not going to let Des's life work fade. Yeah. And there's going to be there will be millions of people in the kingdom when you get there and I get there. Millions of people who came to know the saving love of God through Jesus Christ because of Des's ministry after he died.
Yeah, and look, I've sat here with goosebumps on regular occasions when I've heard people like David Thiel, Ross Cole, John Rosier, John Den. I shouldn't start naming, but people like yourself that are just. I think there's a lot of passion and excitement that's brewing within this group that's going to just splash out there as well. And like you say, it's not about uplifting people, but you have to acknowledge that people are the voice, the legs, the hands, they are the body. And I think it's important to uplift and acknowledge people and encourage specific people that have been given specific gifts. So it's not like an ego massage when I say I think you've been given a special gift, and I'm looking forward to seeing that gift just expand exponentially. So I really appreciate your
thanks,
time.
Peter. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Give the glory to God.
Yeah. Hey, just a couple of quick questions that I just noted. Actually, they're ones you can answer online. They're just about maybe Rosalie Power has got some stuff. Is some of the material that Des produced about Adventist stuff going to be on the website? There's a vast library of sermon tapes at college that no one seems to have heard of or seen. I'm imagining that eventually all of this stuff is going to be available, and that you've no doubt reached out to college archives as well.
I have my means to reach out to college archives, yes.
Yeah,
I'm aware of the material there.
That stuff's going to happen, yeah.
Yeah.
Mate, fantastic chatting with you, and I look forward to having another conversation down the track.
That's awesome.
Let's see where SDA&A goes. The good thing about starting your own thing is that if I express my ideas and they're too radical, oh well, I can't kick myself out.
No, we need more conversation in the church.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the SDA church, I mean in the church, and less judgment, less pontificating.
Yeah.
That's good what you do.
Yeah. Good on you, mate.
All right.
Till next time. Just stopping the long goodbye. So, yeah, what an interview. What an incredible person. Dr. Eliezer Gonzalez. And you can go and check out Good News Unlimited. There's the website. I think it's just goodnewsunlimited.com. goodnewsunlimited.com. And they're just doing incredible work. For nearly 5 million people have visited the site since the start of this year. It's incredible. So, yeah, good on you. Good News Fellowship. So that interview, we're back in 2026 now, was 6 years ago. And I'm committed to bringing up season 2 onto the live platform of YouTube. It was tucked away in Facebook and getting deleted every 30 days. Another one, Facebook, we're just deleting all the old videos. So I've been racing to get them up onto a public platform. And next week I am away, but the week after we're going to have Clifford Goldstein on the show. So if you can think of any questions you would like me to ask him, please let me know. Shoot me some messages in my Facebook Messenger there, or over on Facebook when I put the promo picture up. Now, Clifford is a member of the Facebook group, the private Facebook group SDAQ&A. So anything you say there, he'll be able to read. But try it. I'm not wanting lots of the questions to be answered already before the show starts. So maybe send them to me privately. Any questions for Clifford Goldstein? Not next week, but the week after. That is going to be very interesting. Tomorrow we have Emma Ray on our Good News Fellowship program, not to be confused with Good News Unlimited. But Emma Ray tomorrow, it'll be our 69th Good News Fellowship program. And Emma Ray is always great value. And you can find us on our own YouTube channel at Gospel Good News Fellowship. Straight after the program at 2 o'clock Australia time, 7 p.m. Pacific time, USA, we have book club, Rochelle Anonymous, and our SDA Q&A book club, beginning a new book, C.S. Lewis book, I think it is. So it's all go tomorrow. It's going to be a wonderful Good News family catch up, Good News Fellowship family catch up, followed by book club. As I said, next week I'm away, so I don't think I'll be on the road. So I don't think I'll be posting. I might randomly try and come online and say hi, see how we go. Have a great evening, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Come and join us at the Good News Fellowship YouTube channel. See you later.